Hello guys, so today I'm doing something a little bit different than usual. I want to, little by little, start showing off pieces of my comic collection, and I felt like starting with Legends of the Dark Knight, and the reason for that is because this is the series that kind of sparked my love for collecting single issues, and I think a lot of these stories are really great for people just starting off who want to read some Batman that's a little bit different. You know, if you look up like some of the top Batman stories to start out reading, you get a lot of the same stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like a lot of these stories really kind of capture the essence of Batman in his early years, particularly some of the earlier issues of Legends of the Dark Knight. They tend to be like 1 to 5 issue story arcs that are just sort of isolated stories from Batman's early years, and then as the series goes on, they start to kind of tie in a little bit more with the current Batman, but they do tend to be a little bit more isolated from the greater event that's going on. But yeah, so we're just gonna kind of go through some of the stories I do have in collected editions, so I don't necessarily have all of the single issues, but I do want to complete the run eventually. And a lot of these you can't actually find in collected editions, or they're way out of print, but a lot of these single issues you can just find in dollar bins. So that's why I'm saying, like, these are the best Batman stories for beginners, because you can just get some really good, really solid detective stories from Batman's early years, kind of get a good foundation for what he's like as a character. But either way, I'm going to stop rambling and we're going to get right into it. So first off, we have issue number 0. Now this was a tie-in to the 0 Hour story that took place in the 90s, like 94, so this is not actually the first issue. This was quite a few years after. So Legends of the Dark Knight originally debuted in 1989, and it kind of was riding off the popularity of Batman '89, the Tim Burton movie. And it kind of moved Batman in a bit of a more dark adult direction leading into the 90s, and kind of cementing the character that we know today, the dark, brooding guardian of Gotham. The first issue, there were 4 different variant covers, all different colors, and I do have all of them. This is part 1 to the Shaman story. I do not have the full run of Shaman, but I do have that in a trade paperback. That is an excellent story. It makes a really good companion to Batman Year One. It's kind of like Batman's first real huzzah after becoming Batman, and it's written by Denny O'Neil, so of course, excellent. And that's something also that's really cool about Legends of the Dark Knight, is that most of these are all done by completely different creative teams, so you really get to see a lot of greats, a lot of people you might know today from other things, giving their own little spin on Batman. And right here, this is Grant Morrison's Gothic. I think this was actually his first ever writing on Batman, and this runs through issue number 6 to, I think, issue 10, and it's a 5-part arc. I do have this in a deluxe hardcover, but I found all of these in a dollar bin, so I had to grab it. It's probably the most well-known out of the Legends of the Dark Knight, and for good reason. The story for that one kind of revolves around, you know, there's some mysterious murders taking place, and Batman is kind of reminded of a mysterious figure from his past, a headmaster from school when he was younger, and there were a lot of weird happenings. Yeah, it's really interesting to see Batman kind of put the pieces together to this case and kind of uncover this mystery that's been haunting him his entire life, so definitely check that one out. Out of all of these story arcs, you'll find Gothic. It gets reprinted fairly often, so there are quite a few different editions of that. And then next up, we're moving into issue 21 through 23, and this is a 3-part story called Faith. This is a pretty cool one where there's kind of like this like criminal, this like drug addict who's strung out on drugs, and he winds up seeing this like bat like god figure that he thinks is Batman. So essentially he gives up his life of crime and starts leading this like bat vigilante group, and at first Batman is okay with it, and that kind of leads to some tension between Batman and Leslie Tompkins, who is a really cool character. If you don't know about her, she was an old friend of the Waynes, a colleague of Thomas Wayne's, and she runs a clinic in Gotham. She knows Batman's identity, and she does not approve. So yeah, some really good character moments between Bruce and Leslie, who's kind of a little bit more of an underrated character, so always love to see that. And then we have issue 24, 25, and 26. This is a 3-parter called Flyer. I actually haven't read that one, so can't really say anything about it, but very cool. I'll have to read that one eventually. And then we have Legends of the Dark Knight 27. This is part 2 of Destroyer, which is a story I haven't read. I probably do have the first part, but I don't know about that. I'm not sure which issue, what Batman title it's in, because it's not Legends, so I'm not sure. And then we're getting into another 3-parter. This is Legends of the Dark Knight number 28, Faces. A little Two-Face story there. I remember this one was pretty good. Then we got 35, Destiny. This is kind of a one-off, I believe. And I haven't read it, so don't know. This one was really cool. This was a little one-off. Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight 41, Sunset. There's kind of like this old movie actress who essentially becomes a vampire and wants to like make her comeback, and she winds up like bringing Batman into this whole thing, and it's really cool. This was a really, really interesting story. So if you like vampire stuff, old Hollywood, and Batman, this is definitely a story for you. This was Legends of the Dark Knight number 44 and 45, Turf. This is just a little 2-part story. Not the most memorable, but it was just a cool one of Batman and Jim Gordon kind of doing some detective work, and I always like that. And then this is issue 51, Snitch. I don't think I read this one. I'm pretty sure this is just like a one-off. And then we have 52, and I think this is another 3-parter, so 53. Oh no, this is a 2-parter. Okay. This is Tau. Haven't read this one, so 2-parter right there. Gotta check that one out. 54, Sanctum. This is another one-off. Haven't read it, but it looks really cool. This is a cover by Mike Mignola, and I was definitely drawn to that. So, yeah, definitely one I have to give a read eventually. Legends of the Dark Knight, Storm. This is 58. I really, really dug this story, actually. This was a really simple one, kind of just Batman and Jim Gordon doing some more detective work again on a really gloomy, stormy night, and it's kind of like a political sort of assassination situation going on, so very interesting stuff, very cool. Next up, this is a story I haven't read. I actually do have this in a trade paperback, and haven't read it yet, but this is one I hear is really great. I always hear people raving about this. This is issue 65, and this is the Going Sane story arc. So this is where the Joker, he doesn't have Batman, so he just goes completely normal, and yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that one, so I'll have to read that eventually. And then we have this one right here, I just bought this somewhat recently. This is number 77 and 78. These are 2 of the 3 parts of Sleeping. I do not have part 1. I bought these in a dollar bin, just this whole bundle of 3 issues here, and there's a duplicate of 2. I thought that it was the full story, but no, there was a duplicate in there, so oh well, I'll have to track that down eventually. Okay, and then we have Idols. This is, what number is that? 80, 81, and 82. I definitely read this one. It wasn't the most memorable one, not one of the better stories that I remember. Just kind of like a weird group of criminals sort of dressing up like bats. Not exactly the most innovative or groundbreaking idea, but, you know, whatever. So then next up we have Legends of the Dark Knight, number 86, 87, and 88. This is a story called Conspiracy, and this was a pretty cool one. Kind of some sort of occult ritual murders going on, some ties to a motorcycle gang, and it's really cool. Then we have another one that I haven't read. This is a 2-parter, and it's issue number 89 and 90, and this is Clay, so Clayface story. Haven't read it, but definitely want to check that out soon. Alan Grant wrote that one, so that's cool. And then this one, this was actually a really cool story. If you haven't checked this out, if you're into like Hellblazer or Vertigo stuff, you'll really dig this. And it was written by Garth Ennis, so I think you can already see what you're getting into. But this is Freak Out. This was a really, really cool story. Very different one where you got this guy here. What was his name again? I think it was, I don't remember this guy's name, but he was like this crazy hippie guy who's kind of like this sort of like Beatles fanatic type character who just wants Gotham to all be tripped out on acid, and so he has like his own type of acid, and he wants Gotham to just be totally blissed out, and he's like adding it to blood, so people getting blood transfusions are just fucking tripped out. So yeah, if you ever want to see Batman tripped out on acid, this is the story for you. Batman Freak Out. Yeah, definitely a different one, and one I really enjoyed. So yeah, that looks like a Hellblazer-esque cover right there. So yeah, definitely if you're a fan of Vertigo, if you kind of like some of the weirder, kind of more off-the-walls type stuff, yeah, definitely check that one out. Freak Out. It was 91 through 93. And this is one I did not read. This was a one-shot, 94, and it's called Stories, and as you can see from the background, it looks like it's kind of paying homage to some classic stories from Batman. You know, you got a lot of classic covers back there, so very cool. And of course, you know, I always do the anniversary issues, so we have issue number 100, really nice picture there of Batman and Robin. Have not read it. Very cool though. And then this is issue 114, Playground. Just another one shot. Haven't read it. This one is really cool. Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight, Siege. This is a 5-parter. And this one was cool. Kind of some sort of connections from Batman's past, from like Thomas Wayne's past, kind of coming back to haunt him in that. This one right here, this is The Coldest Case, I believe, from issue 201. Yeah, The Coldest Case of All, from 201 to 203. Cool Mr. Freeze story, so if you like stuff like that, you'll definitely dig that story right there. So this one, The Madmen of Gotham, runs between issues 204, 205, and 206. And this was an interesting one. This one was kind of different, where you have this like group of these Gothamites who are kind of just these mindless zombies, as you can see right there. and Batman kind of discovers a connection between this and something that his father had kind of been hiding away. He kind of makes a discovery in Wayne Manor of, some sort of weird drug his father had been hiding. So very interesting. A lot of stories with some connections to Thomas Wayne there. Always very interesting. Learn more about that. Okay, this was a really, really interesting one here. This is kind of getting a little bit later into like the 2000s. I feel like these stories were better than like what was going on in Batman at the time. 207, 208, 209, 210, and 211. I don't remember the name of this story arc. It doesn't say on them, but this was a really cool one. It was very noir. It's like there was this engagement party for these other like socialites in Gotham, and the woman who is set to be engaged is completely missing, and her weird sister is there trying to seduce Batman. That one right there, she's trying to like seduce Batman, and yeah, this one was a ride. This one was just a trip. There were a lot of crazy twists and turns, so very noir-esque story. If you're into like old noir movies from like the 40s, you kind of got a weird storyline that you would find in something like that. So yeah, I really dig that one. I wish I could remember the name of the story arc, but yeah, issues 207 through 211 right there. And then you got Legends of the Dark Knight. 212, this was just like kind of a one-off, and I don't remember the name of it again, but this was a cool one where there's just kind of like a kid who he sees Batman kind of staking out on the rooftops, and so this kid kind of starts going to that roof and watching for Batman, and then he tells this girl at school, trying to brag and sound cool, like, oh yeah, I know where we can see Batman. And so he takes this girl, and it turned out that Batman was sort of staking out a crime, and this crime winds up ensuing. So while he's trying to win the heart of this girl, Batman winds up throwing down on some criminals, and it's a very cool story, very cute. It has a very nice, sweet ending. So if you like kind of some of the more light-hearted, sweeter sort of Batman stories, this is a good one. You kind of get to see a little bit of the softer side of Batman in that. So that's all I have for like the run of Legends of the Dark Knight, all the numbered issues, but there's a little bit more. I have some like annuals, and there was this 3-part story called Jazz, which they say was a Legends of the Dark Knight special. So I threw them in with these. I haven't read that one yet, but very cool. Love those covers there. And then we have a few annuals. This is the first annual, Duel. This was the 4th annual, and this year they did everything in Elseworlds. So this one was Citizen Wayne. So a little bit of a take on Citizen Kane there. And then we have number 6. I haven't read this, but it's a cool one. And then lastly, we have, this was Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween special. Now, before The Long Halloween came out, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale did a few of these sort of like one-shots that were kind of connected to Legends of the Dark Knight. And these were kind of like the precursor to what became The Long Halloween. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I think that The Long Halloween actually was supposed to start as like a Legends of the Dark Knight. I could be wrong there. It's kind of cool that even though a lot of these Legends of the Dark Knight books kind of fall under the radar for a lot of people, that one of the most iconic and recognizable Batman stories, The Long Halloween, actually was kind of born out of this concept of just kind of telling isolated detective stories, and they just kind of took it to its absolute greatest potential and that was really cool in my opinion. So yeah, if you like the Long Halloween, if you're newer to Batman and you know the Long Halloween, then I think Legends of the Dark Knight might be for you. And I think a lot of people just really don't know about a lot of these stories, so that's why I'm making this video. My favorites always tend to be kind of the underrated stories, and so yeah, definitely this is the way to start reading Batman, in my opinion. Like, you can read some of the bigger stories, you know, read Year One, and then read Shaman, you know, like, that's a really cool companion. Sort of figure out what you like from there, because you can find a lot of these for very cheap, and they're good. Like, not everyone is a winner, not everyone is my favorite story, but like, the ones that shine, I think really shine and really capture the essence of Batman and what I think is important of the character, what I think a lot of modern writers have kind of lost about the character and what makes him so important, and that is just some of these street level crimes. If that's what you're into, if that sounds good to you, then Legends of the Dark Knight might be a run to start collecting. So anyways, that's all I wanted to show. And over here you can see I got a little stack of Lobo. I might stick that in the same box, make this kind of like a modern L box. So yeah, piece by piece, I just want to start showing off bits of my collection, and I thought this would be a great place to start, since a lot of these were some of the earliest books that I picked up in my single issue collecting journey. So there you go. Legends of the Dark Knight. Stay tuned. I actually want to do a video with Jason Momoa being cast. I want to make a video kind of sharing some of the best Lobo stories to read. So if you want to see that, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you.